Sahanau bhunaktu sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, Śrī tattva-sutra. Today we start chapter 3, Adchit Padartha Prakarana, matter. Introduction by Srila Bhakti-yoga Thakur. Here someone may ask, in what form or with what potency does the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond the modes of nature, and whose form is eternal and full of knowledge and bliss, act to create the material universes? To answer this question, the author of the sutras begins this chapter, which gives the definition of the word achit, matter. Sutra 21. Maya Shaktir Achit Gunavati Paravarta Karya Rupacha. Matter is the illusory potency, Maya, which controls the modes of nature and creates a variety of forms and actions from the lowest to the highest. Srila Bhakti-yoga Thakur comments, the Lord's primal potency, primal means essential or fundamental, the Lord's primal potency is endowed with infinite extensions. Among them, two types of extensions can be realized by the human beings. Vidya is the cause of sentience, those who are able to perceive, and avidya is the cause of non-sentience. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport to Śrī Īśopaniṣad Mantra 5, the fact is that there is nothing but God within and without. Everything is a manifestation of his different energies, like the heat and light emanating from a fire, and in this way, there is oneness among his diverse energies. Although there is oneness, however, the Lord in his personal form still enjoys unlimitedly all the pleasures enjoyed minutely by the tiny part and parcel living entities. So there's two things in this purport that are super important for us. Usually we focus on the second thing, understanding how the jiva is the same in nature to Krishna, but to a minute extent. So the same qualities, but different quantity. But the way Srila Prabhupada starts this purport is mentioning that nothing exists that's not Krishna, right? So everything is a manifestation of his different energies. The reason this is important for us to understand is everything that we automatically deal with, we spontaneously are attracted to in our daily lives, is nothing but Krishna. We're not seeing Krishna in these things, but he's there. That's why we're attracted to these things, because his potency is in there that's attracting us. So the beauty of our process is that if we follow the Shastra, the instructions of the Guru and the examples of the Sadhu, and redirect our consciousness, we can actually deal with the same exact things we were dealing with before, but in the proper way, because we learned through Shastra, Guru, and Sadhu how to properly deal with these things, right? So instead of exploiting material nature, we're actually able to use that same material nature that we're already attracted to, but use it in the proper way. And then we're actually satisfied, because when we try to exploit material nature, we're not satisfied. Even if we get some temporary pleasure, we talked about this, whatever day it was, we get stressed out that we're going to lose it, because we know in time it's going to go away. So we spend a lot of money to try to protect it with locks and gizmos and security systems. We might hire even, a crew of people to guard it, but then we think maybe I can't trust this crew, so I got to get another crew to spy on them to make sure that their intentions are pure. But then maybe what if they become friends and they go in cahoots and now they're going to overthrow me, so I better hire a third crew, right? So even if we get some temporary pleasure, we know it's going to end. And so we get stressed out about it. And even if we don't get stressed out, let's just say, whatever, enjoy it while it lasts. This is like a West Coast mentality, laid back. Let's just, be here now, enjoy it while it lasts. Still, it's going to get taken away, right? So we can't actually be fulfilled by these things if we're trying to exploit them in material nature. But if we learn how to use them properly, the same things we're attracted to now that are binding us to the material world become objects of our liberation by freeing us from the how did it say in the Bhagavatam, I think the tree of entanglement? 1.5. That's on my other computer. 1.547 maybe? Let's see if that's it. It's somewhere around that. Oh, that's not a point, that's a comma. It's going to mess it all up.
It doesn't have so much shlokas in this chapter.
What is it?
It has only 40 shlokas.
Oh, maybe 37? 1.5. It might be 34. I don't know. It's not 37. Okay, let's just look at 5. Let's see. Yeah, 34. Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work, right? So since nothing in this world is separate from Krishna, everything can be used in Krishna's service. And once we learn how to do that, then we become liberated. The same things that are binding us now become instruments of our liberation. So that's the beauty of this process, is all we have to do, it seems simple, right, is redirect our consciousness. Srila Prabhupada said, you just do the same thing, you just add Krishna. So that's how we do it. First, we have to understand how these things are nothing but Krishna, and then how to properly utilize them, how they're meant to be used. So those are the two important parts in that purport. Of course, they're equally important because we also need to know that we're simultaneously one with in quality and different from in quantity of the Supreme Lord. That's a very important thing that we have to know. But generally, if you ask a devotee, they can repeat that part. But the first part, it takes a while for us to truly understand, because in the material world, we have a tendency to think there are good things and there are bad things, right? And there's a category, and we have to give up the bad things and accept the good things. And in time, I'll do that. But it's not the thing that's good or bad. It's the consciousness. So we can deal with the same things. And if we caught onto this concept earlier on in our devotional lives, which I imagine some devotees do, it's so much easier to actually make progress in devotional service when we see these things, because then we can just basically, you deal with one attachment at a time, and then as soon as you've successfully dovetailed that, then you just move on to the next one, and then the next one. It's a science. It just goes, it's that easy, actually. As long as we are sincere and detached, which I guess may be rare, but sincerity and detachment come from association with devotees and mercy of Krishna. So luckily it's not in our hands. So we'll continue. The Supreme Personality of Godhead tells the demigod Brahma in Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 9th Chapter, Text 34, O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness, right? So again, whatever we value, if we're not seeing it in relation to Krishna, it's an illusion. as soon as we are able to see it in Krishna service, then we understand the reality. We just become cleared up, right? So there's Krishna, who's the substance, and then the reflection is the shadow. If we're seeing it in terms of separate from Krishna, we're seeing the shadow of it, and therefore it's an illusion. It's not the real thing. But as soon as we're able to see it in connection with Krishna, we're no longer dealing with the reflection. We're dealing with the actual thing. And that's what Krishna is telling Brahma there. Then, in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 10, the Supreme Personality of Godhead declares, "This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again." In the Bhagavad Gita 7:14, the Supreme Personality of Godhead also declares, I think we read this verse this morning too, "This divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it." Right? So this same point's being hit over and over and over again, and we keep, at least I did it early on, I kept missing it. I didn't understand this. This is actually saying that if you're trying to enjoy material nature, you're not going to actually be able to overcome it. Very difficult. But when we redirect our consciousness, we surrender unto Krishna, then easily it becomes easy. So the same point's being made there. Did you have something to add, Tosford, or you just... Okay. Sometimes I see emotion out of the corner of my eye, and I think I didn't want to... Yes?
I have a question to this previous mantra 5 purport. Is saying that Lord is enjoying the same as the living entities. So in which way is he enjoying? Like material world or spiritual world?
No, it means he enjoys unlimitedly, and we enjoy minutely. So all of the things that we get pleasure from in the material world, it's the shadow of the real substance. So he's enjoying it, first of all, in its pure form, not in the material way that we enjoy things, because we tend to exploit things instead of use them properly. So in its pure form, and it's unlimited, no limit to the pleasure. So all the things that we can enjoy somewhat, he enjoys in the pure sense and unlimitedly, completely. So that was the way of saying that even though qualitatively we're the same, quantitatively we are different. Good? Something more? Okay. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 11th chapter, texts 1 and 2, Sri Maitreya declares, "The material manifestation's ultimate particle, which is indivisible and not formed into a body, is called the atom. It exists always as an invisible identity, even after the dissolution of all forms. The material body is but a combination of such atoms, but it is misunderstood by the common man. Atoms are the ultimate state of the of the manifest universe. When they stay in their own forms without forming different bodies, they are called the unlimited oneness. There are certainly different bodies in physical forms, but the atoms themselves form the complete manifestation." In Śrī Īśopaniṣad mantra 11, it is said, "Only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality." Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues, "All superior and inferior activities in this world are transformations of Maya." Here someone may protest, "This potency creates the material world independently, without the help of anyone else. Why must you postulate the existence of a supreme God?" To answer this protest, the author of the sutras speaks these words. So, does everyone understand what the protest is? Does anyone not understand what the protest is? We have to reword it? No? We're good? Okay. So, Sutra 22. Jaratva kriti sunya chetana prerita bhavati samjnavat vat. Matter is naturally inert, for it is neither alive nor conscious. When conscious life pushes it into action, matter appears to be alive and conscious. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments, matter is naturally inert, means it doesn't move, for it is neither alive nor conscious. It has no power to perform any action. When conscious life pushes it into action, matter appears to be warm with life. It is under these conditions that matter appears to act, becoming the creator of the universe. The purport to mantra 10 of Śrī Īśopaniṣad, Srila Prabhupada writes, the material body and mind are bad bargains for the spiritual living entity. The living entity has actual functions in the living spiritual world, but this material world is dead. So, in one sense, it's a bad bargain because we're eternal beings and we're in a temporary situation. In another sense, it's not that bad of a bargain because the other option is that we just don't exist. We wanted to be independent from the Lord. There's nothing outside of the Lord. So I'll take the material body over non-existence, personally. But it's definitely a bad bargain because we by nature are eternal and we're also bliss-seeking entities and knowledge-seeking entities. And so being here in the material body, in the material world, it's torture because we can't get the things that we want, right? That we actually need, or we actually can't express our true nature in the material world without suffering. So the living entity has actual functions in the living spiritual world, but this material world is dead, therefore, bad bargain. As long as the living spiritual sparks manipulate the dead lumps of matter, the dead world appears to be a living world. Actually, it is the living souls, the parts and parcels of the Supreme Living Being, who move the world. The Dhiras have come to know all these facts by hearing them from superior authorities and have realized this knowledge by following the regulative principles. Right, so hearing from this superior authority and then actually following the regulative principles that the superior authorities have given. Before the phenomenal creation, phenomenal meaning that which is perceivable by the senses, nature was in a state of equilibrium. When the transcendental seminal principle of divine vision was projected in it, the equilibrium became agitated, and the phenomenal creation started due to that energy. This is described in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 10, where the Supreme Personality of Godhead declares, again, this material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and is producing all moving and non-moving beings. In the Aitareya Upanishad 1.1.1, it is said, with a glance, the Supreme Personality of Godhead created the material worlds. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues, the mere semblance that the divine glance is manifested in the material world in the form of heat and attraction by which the entire solar universe is activated. The mere semblance of that divine glance is manifested in the material world in the form of heat and attraction by which the entire solar universe is activated and controlled. The jivas are created out of this divine vision, and therefore they are enabled to independently activate the nature. This independence, however, is limited. Again, it's funny how the morning class and the afternoon class are always somehow going together, because we were talking about nature of the enjoyer and consciousness, right? Of course, it's not as much of a surprise this year as it is in the previous years, because this year we're going through thematic study, so so it's not a surprise. In the previous years, it was a little more surprising because it's Bhagavad Gita, and then it's, as we're going through Nectar of Devotion first, somehow it's following the same principles, and then did we do then Nectar of Instruction or Śrī Īśopaniṣad? We did Nectar of Instruction first and then Śrī Īśopaniṣad? No, we did Īśopaniṣad, right? Which was in the Jnana section of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, and then, so somehow it always works out. It's magical. All natural phenomena, changing seasons, earthquakes, generations of cloud and showering of rains, and so forth, are generated due to this divine vision. It is not logical to accept the rules but discard the ruler, right? So we see that these things are all happening. We can observe that. So it's not logical to accept that, okay, there are rules to nature, but then say that, but there's no ruler. Right? Therefore, the inactivity of the mundane nature has been accepted in this sutra due to its inertness. Nature cannot do anything without being activated by the Lord. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 26th chapter, verse 17, Lord Kapila explains, "My dear mother, or daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, the time factor, as I have explained, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom the creation begins as a result of the agitation of the neutral, unmanifested nature." Tulsi Prabhu, is the neutral, unmanifest nature the Mahatattva or the Pradhan?
I don't know.
Okay,
Not sure which one. Can refer to both.
it can, but I think, let's see. One is before. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, and the way it's said here, it kind of can refer to both. But there's a very subtle difference between the two. Anyway, we'll continue. Let me know if you find something. In the next sutra, the author shows that the illusory potency, Maya, is a prison for the conditioned souls. Sutra 23. Sa para nanuraktanam karavad dehadi bandhana rupa. Maya imprisons the conditioned souls who are averse to the Supreme Lord in the form of a physical body, etc. Right? So, an important part there is that those conditioned souls who are averse to the Supreme Lord, that's who's under the influence of Maya. It's not that we were innocently standing by there, minding our own business, we didn't do anything wrong, and then all of a sudden Maya jumped out from behind a tree and pushed us into this material world like an unfair bully, right? It's not like that. We made our decision, and then now we're dealing with Maya. Did you find something?
Well, I checked in the Sanskrit, but the word used is prakriti, so it can refer to both Mahatattva and
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll look again. I remember there was a subtle difference. I forget exactly what it was. Yeah, I'll have to look again.
I would ask a question if, like you were discussing, that the material nature is inert, unconscious, but we know material nature has a personification, and of course the personification of the material nature is the entity, personality, which is conscious. So how these two go together? Like what's the difference? Like Maya Devi or Durga or Sati, Parvati, she is a personality and she is conscious, she is Jiva, not Jiva, but like living entity, Shakti.
Shakti.
Yeah. So it's definitely not unconscious in earth. Like what the common and what's the difference between the personality Maya and matter Maya, as we know it in this material world?
That's an interesting question. So when we say something is Maya, referring to something that's material, I think it's actually just a misuse of the term. It means we're in Maya, we're influenced by Maya to see something which we're seeing it as separate from Krishna, right? So that's the illusion. And Maya means that which is not, so the illusion. So the distinction is, if we're seeing something as separate from Krishna, it is an illusion, right? But the personality, Maya, is the one who is presenting us with options to see whether, which path we're on. I don't know if that answered your question. Did that answer your question? I don't even know if I understood your question, actually. Do you want to repeat it?
Yeah, my question is, but like here it was described that matter is inert and unconscious.
Right.
That's why the living entity should be inside in order matter to start doing something new.
Yeah.
But at the same time, matter, we call it like Maya or the external energy, it's a personality.
Yeah, okay.
So as a personality is not unconscious.
Right, but it's a different thing now.
There is some difference, but at the same time, it's similar.
Means one causes the other. So, in other words, if the concept or the process of seeing something separate from Krishna, that's what
Maya.
Yeah, that's what makes it illusion. The dead matter, which is made up of atoms, that's not Maya, the person, right? That's Maya, we seeing it as disconnected from the Supreme Lord. But as soon as we see it in its proper way, then we're actually dealing not with the shadow, but with the substance. I'm still not sure I get the question. I might be getting the question wrong just by the blank stare on your face. Did you understand the question?
Anyway,
Because we call inner matter Maya. This is saying that inert matter it's dead matter, there's no consciousness, but we also call Maya Devi, who influences us, who decided to turn our back on Krishna. And so he's saying, how can we call this dead matter if it's somehow has something to do with the personification of Maya Devi, Shakti, tattva?
Who's a person?
Yeah. Right, that's the question, right?
Just like energy, energetic. The energetic is the person, the energy is sometimes.
energy personal.
Impersonal represent like separate, the Prabhupada explained, separated from the source energy. So, in Maya is inert material energy because she wants to be, she doesn't want to be conscious. Just like if somebody go for an operation, surgery, then they put you in a coma because you don't want to be conscious of what's going on. So the same way, she doesn't want to be conscious. With all these rascals tend to exploit the resources for their own selfish ends instead of using it for Krishna. That's why she's unconscious.
So originally she is conscious.
Yes, if you approach her in this,
if you approach her with the idea to use her in Krishna's service.
it doesn't mean that now this table will become conscious, because we're using it in Krishna service, but it is spiritualized. It's spiritualized. It's spiritual. In the spiritual world, they are all conscious. Although I don't know exactly how this works. But that's what I said.
Does it mean like we have material vision, so it's like local anesthetics for her?
Material vision,
If
so
we
it's
have
what?
material vision, it's like local anesthetics for her.
Local anesthetics. It's interesting.
No, you definitely cannot control Maya, but it's her own choice. And also, it's Krishna's plan in this place to be material world to be bad. It's a bad place. Only the soul is alive. So everything else is unlike the spiritual.
Okay. I'm sorry, I kind of didn't get the question as well as I should have, but hopefully that made some sense. Thank you, Anandji. Did I start reading Srila Bhakti-yoga Thakur's commentary? No, I don't think so. Here, the word sa means material nature, para means the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and ananuraktanam means they who, exercising their independence, have no love for the Lord and are fond of disobeying his orders. They who, exercising their independence, have no love for the Lord and are fond of disobeying his orders. That's us. For such persons, so here again, it's let's see, material nature, the Supreme Personality, so nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness again. For such persons, material nature provides a series of shackles which begin with the material bodies in which the conditioned souls dwell. This is described in the following words of the Tattva-sutra 2:7.
Just another thing, previous topic. We approach the material energy as something, as an object of enjoyment, so she deals in the same way. We don't approach her as a person, right? We don't care about her. She's a devotee of the Lord, we couldn't care less. So she deals in the same way. She's okay. You don't need to be just that inner matter, so you can manipulate it, enjoy it, try to enjoy it. So that's how she did. It's okay.
But it's also referring to, like, so this body, it's also dead matter, right? Since the spirit soul is there, it seems warm and full of life, right? But as soon as the soul leaves, no amount of chemical or anything like that's going to bring it back to life, right? And so it's done. So in that respect, that's what it's talking about dead matter, which is separate from the idea of the personality of Maya, right? Oftentimes we might confuse them. But, you know, we still have a form in the spiritual world, but it's not the dead kind. It doesn't go through the 6 transformations. It goes through the 6 transformations, it's dead matter. It means there's a soul that's occupying it for some time, but the vehicle, it comes into being, it remains for some time, it grows, it produces some side effects, it dwindles and it dies. Right? So in that sense, we would say it's an illusion to think that we are this body, but it's not like the body is Maya personified, right? That's a different energy. Yeah.
Like the king in the kingdom. That is her domain, but it doesn't mean that she has to be personality of the president. She's controlling it.
Okay. So, in the what's that? In the following words of the Upanishad 227, this is described in the following words. They who do not love the Supreme Personality of Godhead enter a mother's womb and again dwell in a material body. Some even become unmoving trees and plants. They attain different situations in life according to their past deeds and according to their thoughts at the moment of death. I love both Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's vocabulary and the Katha Upanishads. They who, exercising their independence, have no love for the Lord and are fond of disobeying his orders. And then again, they who do not love the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It just tells it like it is. It's not like, the conditioned living entities who, probably cheated by something. No. This is like, you don't love the Supreme Lord, that's why you're here. Doesn't try to fluff it up and say, oh, no, that's okay. You're doing a good job. It's not your fault. No, it is. It's my fault. Tells it like it is. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport to Śrī Īśopaniṣad Mantra 17, the temporary material body is certainly a foreign dress. I can vouch for that. It doesn't fit very well. It doesn't work very well. It needs constant maintenance. Doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It's majorly limited. It doesn't last very long. Yeah, all of these things. The Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 20, clearly says that after the destruction of the material body, the living entity is not annihilated, nor does he lose his identity. The identity of the living entity is never impersonal or formless. On the contrary, it is the material dress that is formless, and that takes a shape according to the form of the indestructible person. No living entity is originally formless, as is wrongly thought by those with a poor fund of knowledge. But in any case, the material bodies of all animals and men are foreign to the living entity. They change according to the living entity's desire for sense gratification. So pure ego is the sense of I am, our individuality. We always have that, right? When it's I am servant of Krishna, it's in its pure state. When it's I am an independent controller and enjoyer, it's in its polluted state, right? As soon as that misuse is there, then everything that we have that's real in the spiritual world, we see a reflection of that, a disconnect of that. It's instead of the substance, we're looking at the shadow. So we see the shadow form, we see the shadow activities that we're dealing with, we see the shadow objects that we're also dealing with. And so in that sense, because that's the Maya, that's the illusion, we're seeing it as not connected to Krishna. So even after all the gross things, but all the subtle things too, the mind, the intelligence, the false ego, because the false ego part is material. We redirect the consciousness, we're back to the real ego. So then we have access again to the substance. So here we're just playing with shadows, right? And in that sense, it's dead because it's not real. It's not the substance, but it's a reflection of the substance. That might be I don't know. We're trying to get closer and closer to ironing out this this question. It's an interesting question. I never really thought of it that way, but. In the purport to mantra 11 of Śrī Īśopaniṣad, Srila Prabhupada writes, since the creation of the material world, everyone has been trying to attain a permanent life, but the laws of nature are so cruel that no one has been able to avoid the hand of death. No one wants to die, nor does anyone want to become old or diseased. The law of nature, however, does not allow anyone immunity from old age, disease, or death, nor has the advancement of material knowledge solved these problems. Material science can discover the nuclear bomb to accelerate the process of death, but it cannot discover anything that can protect a man from the cruel hands of old age, disease, and death. It should be noted here that in the late, I mean, always even before, but I remember in the late 70s, early 80s, my teachers in school were actually telling me that the scientists are going to solve this death problem, because life is just about the chemicals. So as soon as they figure it out, and they're right on the precipice of figuring it out, they'll be able to cure all diseases, extend life indefinitely. And so death isn't something that we have to worry about. This was actually taught in schools then. We're really close, very close, right? So since we have a tendency to forget things, kids nowadays, they're hearing basically the same thing, right? And they think it's true, they're buying it. Those of us who've been around a while, we're like, yeah, no, they've been saying that for a long time, But they're like, yeah, but now we have, these things there's so many things on this. Back when we were little, you had to have a room full of things that's all in this thing. It's a camera, it's a TV, it's a radio, jukebox. What else is it? Oh, a phone. I forgot that. So, the thing that is actually the main thing it's supposed to be. You can call one another. And so, so many things. It's all there. So they figure, okay, well then, surely they can figure out death. It's such a small problem. But the laws of nature, it can't happen. We can't solve that. It's a spiritual problem that we have, right? So it can't be fixed by material means. But as long as we keep convincing people that we're becoming so advanced on this and we're almost there, people believe it. We certainly don't act as if we know we're going to die, right? Everybody knows that one day we're going to die, but who actually acts as if one day we're going to die? We waste so much time, right? Even materialists are wasting so much time because they have so many goals. They want to be millionaires and Olympic athletes and this and that and the other thing, but they're not putting forth the effort because they don't really think that the end is near. And then you got this Smasana Vairagya, either someone that dies, you go to the funeral and you're reminded, oh man, okay, this is actually real, death is going to come. So for like a week you get inspired to follow your passion. But then you're like, I got a long time to live. That was a fluke car accident. I'll just make sure I have my seatbelt on. Everything will be okay. Airbags. I'm protected by man. Man has invented airbags and seatbelts, and so therefore I'm protected. We don't have faith in God anymore. We put our faith in these crazy things, and we don't actually understand that we're wasting a whole lot of valuable time. In the purport to mantra 14.
There was a book I read some time ago. It's called God Wants You Dead. The author was avowed atheist. He was making the point that we can say so many things, but we're advancing and technology is progressing. And we will solve all the problems, but until we come up with a real decision of the death problem, then we cannot say anything. Seriously, we cannot put anything on the table, actually. And therefore, his point was, we may not believe in God. Okay, I don't believe in God, but these guys, the religious people, they have a good point. And we all die. In this sense, he was saying, okay, he was making basically the same point like Prabhupada makes, that at the moment of death, you don't want to offer Dandavat, but at the moment of death, you offer Dandavat to the Lord. So he was making the same point in his own prerogative way. God wants you dead until we solve this. And then he was giving a long list of possible solutions. One of them was this crazy idea about cryonic, freezing people, and the other one was that the fact that is just a disease, some kind of strange disease. The fact that like 100% of the population suffers from this disease doesn't mean that it is not a curable disease. That is his logic. So like he's basically going down the rabbit hole with all this, but they understand, some of these people, they understand, okay, until we solve this problem, we may say so many things, but they still die. Because nobody wants to die. Especially if you don't know, if you don't have any spiritual knowledge, you don't believe in this. Whatever they may say, but yeah. So it's unsolvable. How to prove that?
And it's crazy because we actually have the solution.
Yeah.
But if we truly understood that that was the solution and truly understood how temporary this life is, how none of it actually means anything, we would take it much more seriously. We wouldn't have material attachments because we're actually held back by material attachments, right? We think we have either duties, responsibilities, or we just have desires that we haven't fulfilled yet. And somehow we actually give those priority because we spend our time, energy, money, efforts in accumulating and manipulating these things. But somehow our faith isn't quite there with, the actual solution to it. And if it were, we'd be making much quicker progress.
Even this sentence from Shastra, human life is meant for capacity. Just this sentence, if we take seriously, yes. First of all, we will not be complaining so much, almost zero, because okay, it's austere, but that's what it is. It's meant to be austere. So complaining problem will be solved, let alone no other benefits. Somebody said that if, let's say, you understand that you're going to die tomorrow, if you change anything in your daily schedule today, that means you did not have a perfect life before, obviously. Well, I mean, there is a scope for change, like what Prabhu Maharaj, when he understood that he has 7 days, he changed his life drastically. But you understand what I mean.
Yeah, here in the material world we have, how sometimes you go to a place of business and they have like a suggestion box or a complaint, but you write a complaint on a piece of paper and you stick it in this box, and then the manager, reads it and tells his employees to do a better job. Well, the material world also has a complaint box, but it's situated right on top of a trash can. So it doesn't mean a thing. You can complain all you want. Nothing's going to change unless you change your consciousness. In the purport to Śrī Īśopaniṣad mantra 14, Srila Prabhupada writes, in material nature, everyone is under the stringent laws of matter and must pass through 6 stages of existence: birth, growth, maintenance, production of byproducts, deterioration, and finally death. No one in contact with material nature can be beyond these 6 laws of transformation. Therefore, no one, whether demigod, man, animal, or plant, can survive forever in the material world. The duration of life varies according to species. Lord Brahma, the chief living being within this material universe, lives for millions and millions of years, while a minute germ lives for some hours only. But no one in the material world can survive eternally. Things are born or created under certain conditions, they stay for some time, and if they continue to live, they grow, procreate, gradually dwindle, and finally vanish. According to these laws, even the Brahmas, of which there are millions in different universes, are all liable to death either today or tomorrow. Therefore, the entire material universe is called Martya Loka, the place of death. Material scientists and politicians are trying to make this place deathless because they have no information of the deathless spiritual nature. it's funny because we have the concept of it because we're actually eternal. So clearly we know that something is eternal. It's just not this. So it's interesting that we're trying to make this eternal. Imagine if this were eternal. Yeah, it is for some. Death. Material science and politicians are trying to make this place deathless because they have no information of the deathless spiritual nature. This is due to their ignorance of the Vedic literature, which contains full knowledge confirmed by mature transcendental experience. Unfortunately, modern man is averse to receiving knowledge from the Vedas, Puranas, and other scriptures. So this is our problem. We are averse to receiving knowledge from the Vedas, the Puranas, and other scriptures, and therefore we're fighting against material laws, trying to actually live our nature, which is eternal, in a place where it's impossible. Hiranyakashipu did the best job of trying that, and it still didn't happen. So we're nowhere near as powerful.
Not only that, he was not actually successful.
Yeah.
That's what Bible tells.
Yeah. And it didn't last. Yeah.
I was thinking, like, if you see the situation from the perspective of being attached to the material world, then actually the death is something very bad, because that means you will become separated from all your attachments. So it's something very bad and painful, and we don't want to think about it. But actually, if you look from the other perspective of the spiritual world, that you are in the spiritual world, you are becoming prisoner in the material world, but very soon your sentence will be over, and then you will be allowed to go out of the material world, to prison. Then actually it's a very good news. Just the question is, are you able to see it from the perspective that actually no, it's a troublesome situation, but actually soon I'll be free from this. And then it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. If one is no longer influenced by the illusion, then yeah. Yeah, then there's no need to stress out. Most people should be stressing out because they're going to die and they're not prepared. But a pure devotee who's already got it figured out, they welcome death. They could go either way. They'll gladly stay here and serve Krishna as long as Krishna wants them to serve. But when it's time for the body to go, they're fine. They're like, okay, thank you, Krishna. Finished. Yeah.
What about not pure devotees?
What about not pure devotees? Not pure devotees can also be at least prepared for death. Means they're not so stressed out about it because they know that according to their consciousness and their spiritual growth that they have, there's no diminution or loss. So at least they're going to have a decent birth, if any. But generally, even the pure devotees, they actually still take one more birth, but it's where Krishna's having his pastimes, because we still have to undergo a little bit of training. Most of us, there's some pure devotees, I'm sure, already know their eternal nature, and but generally we follow a perfected devotee, and we get training, and that usually happens. I say here, but it means it's still the spiritual world because it's wherever Krishna's performing his pastimes. So whatever universe Krishna is currently performing his pastimes, there's the birth there, but it's the spiritual world, so it's not a material birth. So, yeah, depending on what our level of spiritual growth is, we may be less nervous about it. But either way, we can take comfort that there's no diminution or loss. So either way, we're going to be able to have access to the devotional path again in the next life. But it's always good to, Srila Prabhupada said, why wait so many births, just do it now. So we should do our best. Krishna sees us taking it seriously, then he gives us all the facilities that we need. He'll give us all the association we need, all the guidance, all the clarity from chanting. But we have to do it. We have to be sincere. Okay. In the Katha Upanishad 2.2.1, it is said, the unborn Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose heart is supremely pure, also resides in the city of 11 gates, that is the material body of the conditioned soul. What's this? The Supreme Lord lives in the material body? Does that mean he becomes contaminated by the material body? Is that why he's there? Did he also see something as separate from Krishna and therefore he's there in the material body? Is that what that means? No. We covered that this morning, didn't we? Didn't we? Or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, we covered that this morning. That the Paramatma is there. So what's the answer?
Out of love and compassion.
Yeah. But he's not materially contaminated. Yes. In Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, text 5, the Supreme Personality of Godhead explains, material nature consists of the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the living entity comes in contact with nature, he becomes conditioned by these modes. Sutra 24. Anadir ananta cha parameshvara shaktitvat. Because it is the potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the material nature has neither beginning nor end. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments, the avidya prakriti originates from the primal potency of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the non-sentient objects may be called beginningless and endless like the jivas. Still, the reality of avidya cannot be compared with the eternal reality of the Supreme Lord, because the reality of avidya depends on the autocratic will of the Supreme Lord. Autocratic means absolute power. In this Smriti Shastra, it is said, please know that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his material energy are both beginningless. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 1st chapter, 1st verse, it is said, O my Lord, Shri Krishna, O son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the material universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Many scholars categorize the time among absolute and eternal objects, but this is not so. The following sutra explains what time is. Sutra 25. Kalo nartantaram badhanam prakriti sambandha rupatvat. Time can be defined as a form of relation between the fallen souls and the phenomenal nature. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments, the purport of scientific theology is to categorize the reality under some common characteristics and to minimize the number of ultimate principles. So we like to put things in boxes that categorize them, make it simpler. Unnecessary increasing of the number of these principles is not at all reasonable. Therefore, the author of this book, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, has accepted only two such principles, sentience and non-sentience, spirit and matter. In his book Bhakti-Sutra, the sage Shandilya also accepts only these two principles as objects. Quote, the major categories are 1, spirit, and 2, matter. There is no third. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues, time has been often explained as the influence of the Supreme Lord. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 26th chapter, text 16, Lord Kapila explains, the influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is felt in the time factor, which causes fear of death due to the false ego of the deluded soul who has contacted material nature. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues, the conditioned souls who identify with matter are afraid of this divine influence, time. Time is manifested due to the relation of sentience with matter. At the absence of the jivas who would have realized the existence of nature, right? There's no observer. Does it really even exist? Thus, the awareness of the existence of Prakriti is time. So someone has to be there to be aware of it. In other words, the relationship between the fallen souls and mundane nature is called phenomenal time. Time, however, does not control the Lord and the liberated jivas. So it should be noted here, because these 6 transformations happen through time, right? Time in the material world dictates what can happen. There are certain things that can only happen during the daytime. There are certain things that can only happen at night. And of course, time dictates how long we're here, right? We can only live for so long. In the spiritual world, it's not that there is no time. It's that time doesn't dictate the past time. It serves the past time. So there are things like sunrises and sunsets and full moons and half moons and things like that. There are seasons where there's different types of flowers and things like that. So there's a sense of time, but it never pressures you to do anything. It just serves the pastime. So whatever the pastime is, whatever the perfect suitable time is, that's what displays itself. But it's not that the cowherd boys are playing in the fields and they realize, oh no, we're going to be late. We better head home. It doesn't happen like that. So there's this idea of time there, obviously, because anything that happens here is a reflection of what's there. But as it's said here, time does not control the Lord and the liberated jivas. So nobody in the spiritual world is controlled by time. They are served by time to facilitate the pastime better. Therefore, the idea that time is a major category of existence is rejected by this sutra. Time is not a major category. It is merely an intermediary who establishes a relationship. So if you put these two together, spirit and matter, as soon as they come together, there's time. It's just a concomitant factor. So to present it as a separate factor is pointless, because then you just get more confused, because then you just say, oh, well then, let's just talk about this part. No, so it's just like that. The study of time goes together with the study of another principle called space. This is the topic of the next sutra. So just as time is a concomitant factor, the space or the area in which we, deal with things is also a concomitant factor. So it's not considered an extra category. It falls within the two, spirit and matter. Sutra 26. Saivadishtana Rupini Desha Samnita. The mundane nature constitutes the space which accommodates the mundane living beings. Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments. Matter provides a dwelling place for the conditioned souls. This place is called the three dimensions of material space. An example of material space is given in these words of the Śāstra-cakṣuṣā 4, 6, and 7. Although the two birds are on the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments. The tree here is the material dwelling place, the body of the conditioned souls. Material philosophers assert that the element earth is the resting place of all other material elements. This is described in the following words in the Mundaka Upanishad 2.1.3. From the Supreme Personality of Godhead are born life, mind, all the senses, ether, air, fire, and water. All these rest on the element earth. Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments, but the earth itself is situated in space, occupying a certain portion of it. Therefore, the space itself is the support of the earth. In fact, space is the first manifestation of the inert nature. It is the first support of all phenomenal objects. Ultimately, the inert nature and the sentient beings originate from the Supreme Lord. Any questions so far? So when there's creation, after the glance and the ego mixes with these different modes, ether is created. Along with ether comes the devata who presides over sound and the quality of sound and the ear, the capability of perceiving the sound. From there comes air, along with the deity who's in charge of tactile sense. Everybody knows tactile,
Yeah.
touch, etc. Then, where are we at? Water? Yeah. No, fire. I skipped fire. Yeah. So then there's fire, along with its presiding deity, and form. Because once there's fire, we can see, we can perceive. So then the eye. Then water, and taste comes from water, presiding deity, and the tongue. And then earth, aroma, Ashwini Kumars, the presiding deities over the sense of smell. So when the yogi perfects himself, he no longer has to breathe. You read the process of a yogi basically putting all of the elements back where they belong. So first the earth is merged into the water, then the water into the fire, fire into the air, into the mind, the total intelligence, the total false ego, etc. So it's creation in reverse. So these things were basically unpacked like nesting dolls. What are they called in Russia? Matryoshka?
Yeah.
Matryoshka. Okay. Unpacked, and then so if we understand through Sankhya the difference between spirit and matter, then we can repackage everything and leave the place cleaner than we've met it and continue back to where we belong.
Yeah, it sounds like cleaning the bhakti Then after cut, you put the paper in the trash where it's paper kept, and then the organic in the organic.
Yeah.
Very cultural. They
Yes.
do this. Really, this is their own body.
Yeah. So then, Sutra 27. Jade Baddha Syananda Brahmo Vaikunta Brahmash Chasangat. Due to the delusion created by Maya, the fallen souls, with their defective intellect, misconstrue the phenomenal misery as bliss and the phenomenal abode as their eternal abode, and become attached to them. So defective intellect and phenomenal misery. Yeah, so we learned before that the natural inclination, characteristic, is knowledge, inclination is love. So that if we have defective intellect, then we misconstrue that. And also defective bliss is that misery. And so we think that this temporary situation is actually something that is eternal. And that's why then there's suffering. We consider these things home. This body that's temporary, we consider it ourselves. And so that's where the misery comes from. But nonetheless, we become attached to them because we're occupying. These two illusions are called Ananda Brahma and Vaikunta Brahma. Srila Prabhupada discusses Ananda Brahma in its purports to Śrī Īśopaniṣad mantras 7 and 11. The spiritual entities are meant for enjoyment, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra 1.1.12. Ananda Mayo Bhyasat. By nature and constitution, every living being, including the Supreme Lord and each of his parts and parcels, is meant for eternal enjoyment. The living beings who are encaged in the material tabernacle are constantly seeking enjoyment, but they are seeking it on the wrong platform. We read, I think this was yesterday when we read this. Apart from the material platform is the spiritual platform, where the Supreme Being enjoys himself with his innumerable associates. On that platform, there is no trace of material qualities, and therefore that platform is called Nirguna. On the Nirguna platform, there is never a clash over the object of enjoyment. Here in the material world, there is always a clash between different individual beings, because here the proper center of enjoyment is missed. So that was the beginning of yesterday. I think we started with that. The real center of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, who is the center of the sublime and spiritual rasa dance. We are all meant to join him and enjoy life with one transcendental interest and without any clash. That is the highest platform of spiritual interest. And as soon as one realizes this perfect form of oneness, there can be no question of illusion, moha, or lamentation, shoka. Since all living beings are beloved sons, his parts and parcels, God is more sorry than we ourselves to see the sufferings we are constantly undergoing in this material condition. The miseries of this material world serve to indirectly remind us of our incompatibility with dead matter, right? We think this thing is going to give us pleasure, so we give it a shot. We realize that it's not actually going to give us pleasure, so it should remind us that we're actually incompatible. eternal beings, temporary situation, doesn't work out. So these things should remind us that we don't belong here. Continuing. Intelligent living entities generally take note of these reminders and engage themselves in the culture of vidya, or transcendental knowledge, right? So if you're intelligent, you'll take note of these various reminders that we actually do not belong here and cultivate the culture of knowledge. Human life is the best opportunity for the culture of spiritual knowledge, and a human being who does not take advantage of the opportunity, of this opportunity, is called a Naradhama, the lowest of human beings. So that was Ananda Brahm. Now, Vaikuntha Brahm is discussed in the purports to mantras 11, 12, and 14 of Śrī Īśopaniṣad. Srila Prabhupada writes, since the creation of the material world, everyone has been trying to attain a permanent life. But the laws of nature are so cruel that no one has been able to avoid the hand of death. No one wants to die, nor does anyone want to become old or diseased. The law of nature, however, does not allow anyone immunity from old age, disease, or death, nor has the advancement of material knowledge solved these problems. We just read this earlier. Material science can discover the nuclear bomb to accelerate the process of death, but it cannot discover anything that can protect man from the cruel hands of old age, disease, and death. From the Puranas, we learn of the activities of Hiranyakashipu, a king who was very much advanced materially. Wanting to conquer a cruel death by his material acquisitions and the strength of his nescience, he underwent a type of meditation so severe that the inhabitants of all the planetary systems became disturbed by his mystic powers. He forced the creator of the universe, the demigod Brahma, to come down to him. He then asked Brahma, can you imagine that? Becoming so powerful that Brahma actually has to go to you to calm you down? He then asked Brahma for the benediction of becoming Amara, by which one does not die. Brahma said he could not award the benediction because even he, the material creator who rules all planets, is not Amara. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 8:17, Brahma lives a long time, but that does not mean he is immortal. The whole point here is that even Hiranyakashipu, the most powerful of materialists, could not become deathless by his various plans. What then can be accomplished by the tiny Hiranyakashipus of today, whose plans are thwarted from moment to moment? It's also worth pointing out, I mean, we know what Hiranyakashipu did in order to get where he got. We couldn't even come close to replicating his austerity, and he still couldn't. He still couldn't become satisfied by it. Śrī Īśopaniṣad instructs us not to make one-sided attempts to win the struggle for existence. Everyone is struggling hard for existence, but the laws of material nature are so hard and fast that they do not allow anyone to surpass them. In order to attain a permanent life, one must be prepared to go back to Godhead. There's no permanent life here, but we try. Hope against hope. We try to make a comfortable situation here in the material world. In the scriptures, there are recommendations for worshiping demigods under certain circumstances. But at the same time, these scriptures state that there is normally no need for this. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 23, it is clearly stated that the results derived from worshiping the demigods are not permanent. Since the entire material universe is impermanent, whatever is achieved within the darkness of material ignorance is also impermanent. The question is how to obtain real and permanent life. The Lord states that as soon as one reaches Him by devotional service, which is the one and only way to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one attains complete freedom from the bondage of birth and death. In other words, the path of salvation from the material clutches fully depends on the principles of knowledge and detachment gained from serving the Lord. The pseudo-religionists have neither knowledge nor detachment from material affairs, for most of them want to live in the golden shackles of material bondage under the shadow of philanthropic activities disguised as religious principles. By a false display of religious sentiments, they present a show of devotional service while indulging in all sorts of immoral activities. In this way, they pass as spiritual masters and devotees of God. By its so-called advancement of knowledge, human civilization has created many material things, including spaceships and atomic energy. Yet it has failed to create a situation in which people need not die, take birth again, become old, or suffer from disease. Whenever an intelligent man raises the question of these miseries before a so-called scientist, the scientist very cleverly replies that material science is progressing and that ultimately it will be possible to render man deathless, ageless, and diseaseless. Such answers prove the scientist's gross ignorance of material nature. In material nature, everyone is under the stringent laws of matter and must pass through the 6 stages of existence: birth, growth, maintenance, production of byproducts, deterioration, and finally death. No one in contact with material nature can be beyond these 6 laws of transformation. Therefore, no one, whether demigod, man, animal, or plant, can survive forever in the material world. We also just read this. Yeah, since we just read it a matter of minutes ago. Skip ahead. So then, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments on this sutra. The Ananda Brahma is further divided into 2 types. The delusion of observed pleasures derived by the present senses, and the delusion of audible pleasures, heavenly enjoyments. The Karmakanda scriptures tempt the human beings with heavenly enjoyments, which are actually only delusions. They cannot truly satisfy the soul. Therefore, in the Katha Upanishad, Nachiketa tells Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, in the spiritual world, there is not fear of old age or of you, O death. There, one crosses beyond both of them. In the spiritual world, there is no anxiety to attain food and drink. The residents of the spiritual world enjoy transcendental bliss. Every human being soon meets his death. Quickly, his senses become old and weak. Everyone's life is brief. Your chariots, singing and dancing, will last only for a moment. Thinking material pious deeds as the best of all actions and affirming that no other action is better than them, fools go to Svargaloka, enjoy, and then again return to the world or worlds beneath it. To this world or the worlds beneath it. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues. This delusion results from the jiva's defective association with matter, where he forgets his own spiritual character and endeavor to obtain happiness from the miserable matter. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verses 62 and 63, the Supreme Personality of Godhead declares, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops. From lust, anger arises. From anger, delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. In his commentary on these words, Sri Shankaracharya explains, here it is said that contemplation of the sense objects is the root of all that is undesirable. All that is undesirable takes root in just contemplating in the senses. As a result, the jiva is mistaken the sense pleasure as bliss and the material world as Vaikuntha. This delusion is quite harmful to the soul. In the next sutra, the author describes the remedy for this deadly disease. Sutra 28. Vivekena tato vimuktihi. Using the intelligence's power of discrimination, one can become free from these illusions. So we have to cultivate our intelligence and be able to discriminate the difference between spirit and matter. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments, here the word tataha means from the two previously described illusions, namely muktihi. Muktihi means the individual souls attain freedom, and vivekena means by understanding the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual spirit soul. In his purport to mantra 11 of Śrī Īśopaniṣad, Srila Prabhupada explains how to defeat these illusions. The process by which one goes back to Godhead is a different branch of knowledge, and it has to be learned from revealed Vedic scriptures such as the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. To become happy in this life and attain a permanent blissful life after leaving this material body, one must study this sacred literature and obtain transcendental knowledge. The conditioned living being has forgotten his eternal relationship with God and has mistakenly accepted the temporary place of his birth as all in all. The Lord has kindly delivered the above-mentioned scriptures in India and other scriptures in other countries to remind the forgetful human being that his home is not here in this material world. The living being is a spiritual entity, and he can be happy only by returning to his spiritual home. In the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 4.4.12, it is said, if a person knows the true nature of the soul, and if he thinks I am spirit, then what will he desire in the material world? How will he become attached to his material body? Right? If a person actually understands that he is soul, there's no way he's going to try to live in this material world. There's no way he'd be satisfied in this material body. We're actually convinced that we're soul. We'd say, you call this a body? It doesn't work right, it's stinky, you gotta continuously feed it, you gotta take care of it, it only lasts 100 years at best. No person who actually understands the nature of the soul, actually understands that we are spirit, wants to actually stay here in the material world. In the Mundaka Upanishad 2.2.9, it is said, thus the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as the master. In the Narada Pancharatra, second night, second chapter, it is said, quote, by associating with the devotees of Sri Krishna, one attains unwavering, unmotivated, blissful devotional service that eventually allows one to serve Lord Krishna directly. As a tender new sprout on vines or trees grow with the rains and withers with the scorching sunshine, so a new sprout on the tree of devotional service grows by conversing with devotees and withers by conversing with non-devotees. Mm-hmm. So this is why Srila Rupa Goswami has advised us to be very careful about who we associate with. We accept association that is favorable to devotional service, and we reject the association which is not favorable. And just like a tender new sprout can be completely scorched by the sunshine, even our tender bhakti can be burned up by taking the association of non-devotees. In Bhagavad Gita 4.34, the Supreme Personality of Godhead says, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. And then the next sutra, which we will read tomorrow, will define the results of applying such determination. So we learned what the illusions are, the power of illusions, the cause of the illusion. And we're covering the difference between spirit and matter, the necessity of understanding that we are spirit, the activities we will, or our characteristics that we will have if we truly understand we are spirit, the process by which to attain the knowledge, actually, if we're convinced that, that we're spirit soul, and then tomorrow we'll learn how to apply it. Any questions on today? We covered a lot today. Okay, no questions for today. Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai, Śrīla Bhakti-yoga Thakur ki jai, Śrī Tattva-sutra ki jai.